Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this session on the data-boosted international collaboration. My name is Leslie Daigle, and I'm the CTO and Director of the Internet Integrity Program at the Global Cyber Alliance. I will be the moderator for this one-hour session, and we're going to do it in two parts. First, we will have some high-level remarks from the two gentlemen seated to my left, and then we will have engagement from two other organizations that will share some particular perspectives. So we will have three organizations talking about their experiences in data-boosted international collaboration. I would like to say thank you very much to CSA for helping us set up this session, and I hope you all will enjoy hearing what we have to say this afternoon. So for now, please let me introduce Mr. Lim Soon Chia to tell us about his experiences from CSA Singapore.
Thanks, Leslie. Good afternoon all, and good afternoon, Mr. Philip Rettinger, CEO President of Global Cyber Alliance. Good afternoon all. I'm really excited to welcome you to the Global Cyber Alliance Data-Boosted International Collaboration for a Safer Internet at our 7th iteration of the Singapore International Cyber Week, or SICW in short. It has been a long time since we had such an in-person event of this scale, and I'm most grateful and heartened to see all of you here across the globe, and especially appreciative of those of you who have traveled all the way to join us here in SCW amidst your busy schedule. These past few years have indeed been challenging. Amongst them, the pandemic, the strategic geopolitical situation, the global economic challenges. For cybersecurity, the pandemic has incidentally catalyzed the blazing acceleration towards digitalization, making cybersecurity even more important given the greater need for sustainability and resilience. The intense and dynamic cybersecurity threat landscape has amplified cybersecurity as a core business risk and security concerns in our pursuit of smart nation and digital society. And as a nation and as a cybersecurity agency, we began the pandemic fighting the flames of cyber attacks on our citizens and our businesses. And we realized we needed to be better protectors. The question is, how? Part of the answer is to continue to drive both cyber innovations to deliver creative solutions that better protect our citizens and in the process transform the mindset of our nations towards cybersecurity. And in our pursuit to be a smart nation and of course a secure one as well, we are relentless in driving to explore and operationalize new and creative ideas. And on this front, I would highlight a few examples that we have initiated. First, the cybersecurity labeling scheme. In 2020, CSA launched the world's first multi-level cybersecurity labeling scheme for consumer IoT devices, or CLS in short. And this initiative was mooted to actually address the increased cybersecurity risk brought about by the rapid proliferations of IoT products, coupled by increased connectivity and yet the lack of cybersecurity provisionings in these devices. 2 years on, we have more than 200 labeled products across a spectrum of product categories in online stores and physical shops. Importantly, as we raise cyber hygiene through the operationalization of CLS, we are transforming mindsets both in the industry and consumers themselves. Beyond product assurance, the labeling scheme provides greater transparency to the consumers so as to immune cybersecurity consciousness in consumers' purchasing habits. This is helping to transform consumers' mindset and getting them ready for our digital future beyond just its IoT focus. It is also transforming the industry, its flexible construct and agile governance modality depart from the conventional developer-centric compliance-focused approach predicated on legislation, which is often too little too late, and leveraging on market dynamics and competitive branding, it is transforming the product evaluation ecosystem to a more proactive and sustainable industry, where it is proactive in developing more secure products in pace with the advancement of technology, incentivized by market demands and dynamics. At the same time, its pursuit for global mutual recognition to garner a more collective win-win attitude to orchestrate a safer and more secure digital future while growing digital economy by addressing key industry woes together. The next example, the Internet Hygiene Portal. In this SICW, we have launched the Internet Hygiene Portal, or IHP in short. IHP is a platform for business to access informational resources and self-assessment tools to help them adopt internet security best practices in their websites and email domains. We call it a AAA platform: awareness, assessment, and adoption. And this platform is giving us more transparency, to consumers to allow them to make informed decisions on the websites and emails they choose to use. Over the past couple of years, we have helped to transform the internet security levels. Over the past couple of weeks, we have helped to transform the internet security levels of popular e-commerce domains by using IHP. The adoption of internet security best practices was intensified, and many e-commerce platforms have readily embraced the need for higher cyber hygienes to give consumers a greater sense of confidence and assurance against online harms. And we tend to continue proliferating this both vertically and horizontally across other industries and domains to build a safer and more secured cyberspace in Singapore and across the region. And of course, GCA's 8 initiative. All this innovation will not be possible without collaborations. In that vein, CSA is collaborating with the Global Cyber Alliance Automated IoT Defense Ecosystem, or AIDE in short. GCA has created an innovative platform by multiplying honeypots across the world that give us an early warning signal that can potentially help everyone avert the next Mirai botnet attack. I will leave GCA to tell you more. And CSA believes that such innovative platform will provide better global awareness of the IoT threats and help us better understand attacker tactics and help transform consumers' awareness for IoT security at an industry level. With this, we hoped to garner global efforts to build a safer and more secured IoT ecosystem. And we are excited to participate in this collaboration and encourage more industries and government agencies to do likewise. By driving innovations and transforming mindsets, CSA hopes to help to create a safer and more secure future for our nation. And this will be a journey, and one that we hope to work with like-minded partners to push the frontiers. Singapore hopes that by driving each new idea, each innovation, we are not just providing better solutions to the cybersecurity challenges, but one that can help the world transform its mindset towards cybersecurity. The few initiatives are just examples, and most importantly, let's all work together to foster a win-win triple helix partnership between government, industries, and consumer for a more secured world tomorrow. And once again, I welcome you all and urge you to do your part in driving cybersecurity innovation, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, now let us move on to Mr. Phil Reidinger from the Global Cyber Alliance.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you as well, Sunjia, for your both your remarks and the great partnership that we've had from the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon on the last day of a conference here, so I'm going to keep it, I think, relatively simple to get a key message through. So this panel is called Data-Boosted Collaboration to Help Secure the Internet. Let's start with that word, internet, right? What is, and I was thinking here about a panel we had earlier today, or we saw earlier today, where Olaf Kolkman from the Internet Society went through what is an internet. And among other things, it's a network of networks, right? So it is not a standalone thing that one person owns. It is a collective that unites multiple networks together and all of us. So what does that mean? That means that it's not possible for any of us to secure this on our own. It takes collaboration. It takes, as a then presidential candidate used to say in the United States, it takes a village. But it takes more than a village. It takes a global network to secure the network. You've heard the phrase, perhaps, think globally, act locally, to suggest that people need to think much more broadly, but then take local individual action, for example, protecting their environment. We can add a third piece to that on the internet, which is think globally, act locally, and act globally. Because that's what collaboration on the internet enables. If you build the right tools, if you build the right services, if you have the right standards like CSA is working to develop and have adopted globally, then you can have global action that protects everyone. And the internet enables a scale in response to threats like which we have not seen before. So that's the space that the Global Cyber Alliance likes to work in. And if you'll indulge me, I'll spend a minute or two talking about us. We're a global organization headquartered in 4 different countries now with more than 100 partners around the world that looks for those places where it does, in fact, take a village. It takes a community to have action. Right? So there are places where governments can do things. There are places where the private sector can do things. And if you've been attending this conference, you've heard about a number of those initiatives. But there are also places where we have to have a community. And in fact, the internet was built from the very start through a multi-stakeholder process, a multi-stakeholder governance process. So we've got to mirror the way the internet runs in how security runs on the internet. And that's the space that GCA works in. Just to take one example. We heard from Mr. Lim recently about the internet hygiene portal that has been launched in Singapore. GCA has a similar initiative called the Cybersecurity Toolkits, and we've got a small, for example, a cybersecurity toolkit for small business that also focuses on internet hygiene. But like there is an initiative in Singapore, that's intended to be a global initiative that's available in 5 languages for where there needs to be an approach that requires less resources from a country than Singapore could put into the process. That's the space we like to work in. What is a project? What is an intervention that GCA could do, bringing a collection of entities together to actually make the internet more secure, which is where the other terms in that data-boosted collaboration to secure the internet. Collaboration means it takes a community, and secure the internet means it actually there has to be an effect. We have to make a difference. We have to focus on solutions that work at scale with global action mirrored with local action. So that's the space we work. And another example of that is the IoT aid work that we're doing with the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. I'm going to leave Leslie will talk about that later in her discussion. What I'd like to say are a couple more things. One is, although this is a space GCA works in, and I think we're perhaps the only organization that, we're agnostic about whether there's a technical solution or a policy solution, or whether it's associated with authentication or some other domain of action. So we just want to look for the areas where a project would have the biggest difference. there are a number of nonprofits that work in this space, working for what I would like to call public interest cybersecurity. So let me spend a second talking about that. As I said, there are things that government can do, there are things that the private sector can do, but there's a whole bunch of things that are outside of the traditional interests of government or industry. Things where there's a public good that is international in scope. And without NGOs, without nonprofit organizations like GCA, like the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams, like the Cyber Peace Institute, like the Center for Internet Security, like the Cyber Defense Alliance or the Cyber Threat Alliance, all of these different entities work on actually making a difference in space. And so, in February of this year, these organizations got together and launched a first of its kind collaboration, a coalition of now 30 of these nonprofit organizations called Nonprofit Cyber, to make sure that they can work together as effectively as possible for collaboration to secure the internet. Now, the data boosted part. The data boosted part here is our very first project, which will be coming out very shortly, is a listing of all the things, about 120 of them, that these organizations already do to help the community. So you'll see an announcement coming out about that. This is a teaser, but it is the sort of data that will enable all of these 30 organizations to work together more effectively and with key partners like the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore to make sure that we are having an effect at global scale. If you want to know more about it, or you're at a nonprofit and you think you might be interested in joining, you can go to look at nonprofitcyber, just those words, .org, and you can see all of the organizations that are participating and the work that's being done in that space. The last thing I'd like to mention is, there's something we know. Again, going back to the title, data-boosted collaboration to secure the internet. Well, what do we know about the security of the internet? I like to say that, I've been doing this full-time since roughly 1995, so going on 30 years. And the one prediction I've been able to make every year is that next year things will be worse. And I've been right every year. The good people, the good organizations, the government, the private sector, nonprofit organizations are all working together, and we're getting better and better at securing, at building resiliency every year. But the attackers, and you've heard something, I'm not going to go back through all of the discussion you've had here, but you've heard some things about some of the things that are happening on the internet. And you will note that the level of criminal activity, the scope of criminal activity, and the damage from criminal activity continues to expand every year. So what are we going to do about that? A new initiative was launched earlier this year in the United States by a coalition of organizations with the leadership of Craig Newmark. You may have heard of Craig before, you might not have, but Craig is one of these people who was present at the creation of the internet. So he established a service which is very popular both in the United States and in many places outside the United States called Craigslist. And he made a reasonable amount of money out of this service. But Craig isn't sitting on his money. He's not saying, I earned a lot from the internet. He's pumping it back in to making the internet a better place. And he promised to donate $50 million. Yeah, that's right, $50 million or more of his own money to help ensure that we can build a whole of society effort to respond to internet insecurity. And what that means is a number of things. It means that, it's called cyber civil defense, and the reason Craig is fond of that terminology is if you think back to the perspective of civil defense, it's all about everybody playing their role. Everybody helping to secure a country, or in this case, the internet. And cyber civil defense is about that as well, making sure that we actually have, if we're going to respond to this increasing threat, a global initiative to respond to it that enables everyone to participate. So GCA, within that scope, is, I mentioned from the start, we build tools and services, we build capabilities, we tackle projects. We're going to take that work and we're going to move it outside just GCA and help to build an overall community effort across, for example, all of the nonprofit cyber organizations and more entities, government entities, private sector companies, to make sure, do we have available tools and services that will enable anyone in the world, whether they're an individual, a small business, a larger company, an internet service provider, to take on the roles that they need to take on to make the internet a more secure place. So I won't go into that anymore, other than I'm happy to send people links or share further data. If you look on our website, you'll see information about cyber civil defense. And if you're interested in participating in this effort, please reach out to me or to us, to Leslie. We'd love to bring you in and get your guidance on how, again, to build a global process that helps make sure we understand the cybersecurity needs of everyone in the ecosystem. And we are, not just GCA, but all of the entities who are playing in this are building the tools and services that will enable them to play their roles. So thank you. I appreciate your attention. And let me hand it back to you, Leslie.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you both very much for the great context setting for the larger question of how to do data-boosted collaboration for international collaboration. Before I dive into my more remarks about the work that we're doing at GCA, particularly on the topic of IoT, I would like to introduce my two colleagues from other organizations who will also be presenting information of their experiences in the topic. So here we have Mr. Piotr Lewandowski, who is a senior software engineer at the Information Security Methods Department of NASK, Poland's National Cybersecurity Authority, and a very active partner of the Global Cyber Alliance. And he's connecting from Poland. And Ms. Evelina Vrede, who is the program manager at the Safety and Security Institute of TU Delft, a leading research center from the Netherlands that is currently exploring collaboration with the Global Cyber Alliance as well. And she is connecting from Delft. So thank you both for joining us. And momentarily we will have your slides and your direct remarks. For now, if we can move back to the slides, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the work that GCA has done and is doing in the context of IoT. And I'm sure there are slides somewhere. Nope, not these slides. The slide deck 1. That say aid. There we go. Thank you very much. So I'd like to give you a very brief overview of the IoT work that we have done and are doing. I know that Phil has given you a very thorough introduction to GCA's overall mission, so I've provided some of these slides as material that you can review later at your leisure. But the Internet Integrity Program, of which I'm the director, includes the IoT, domain trust, and routing security Quad 9 type problems. So is working at solutions at the systemic or infrastructure level of the internet to develop security solutions at scale. So the AID project is the Automated IoT Defense Ecosystem. And it's got 3 key components that are worth reflecting on. Notably the collection of data, automatically collecting data about IoT attacks that are occurring from all over the world at any given time, with hundreds of sensors placed across the globe to collect that very information. It's also about analysis. So once we've aggregated the data from our sensors, and in principle from others' sensors as well, doing an analysis to see where there are trends and what lessons we can learn about attack patterns, attack sources, and what we can do to build defenses against them. And then ultimately it's about distribution as well. We are putting this data together and working with specific partners, such as the folks that we see here today, so that others can collaborate and help us understand what's going on in the data and in the attacks, as well as providing their own learnings and introducing new mechanisms for addressing the problems that they see as well. And that really is fundamentally a collaborative effort on all levels. In the AID project, you can see that we have a number of target communities that we're interested in understanding how things are working from the standpoint of regulation and policy analysis, smart cities, IoT and CPE manufacturers, as well as working with CERTs and other law enforcement agencies, as well as universities and research centers. So it's a pretty broad spectrum of target communities and collaboration. So in a nutshell, these are the numbers for the AID project. It's been collecting data for 4 years already. It currently has 200 sensors that are distributed across the globe, and it has 5 billion data records. So clearly there's a lot of data here, and hopefully a lot of lessons to be learned. But this is our data to boost finding solutions to IoT security challenges. And I know that we're at the very end of a cybersecurity conference, at the very end of a day that's had a lot of focus on IoT, but I still wanted to make sure that everybody had a really visceral understanding of what are we defending ourselves against, or how much are we defending ourselves against. So this is just a graphic of a given day's attacks to and from Russia. For some reason, Russia was important in cybersecurity attacks this year. I can't imagine why. And here's similarly just a graphic of a moment in time of attacks to and from the United States. You can see that these kinds of attacks are ongoing all the time and numerous. And here's an example of Singapore, attacks to and from Singapore. No one is immune from attacks. So if you thought that you were going to provide security for your devices by, it just wouldn't happen to you, guess again. And this graphic attempts to demonstrate that the information that we have on a case where we could identify a single attacker. And the impact of this particular graphic is that single attackers can attack from anywhere at any time. So don't think that you're going to solve your cybersecurity problems for IoT by blocking certain geographies or blocking particular IP addresses because the infiltrators have worked out how to attack from anywhere, anytime. So briefly, we are very much focused on international collaboration, as I've mentioned before. We have worked with policies and standards and analyzing their impact. And now we're turning it around a little bit and looking at all of that unwanted traffic. Is there a way to identify where it's coming from and stop it before it becomes a problem, and move on from there to building a community around researching through the data and doing big data analytics to find patterns and trends in the data. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention more detail about the project that we're working on with CSA Singapore for their IoT threat analytics platform, which really is an international effort to use the infrastructure that and the tools that we have built to have a look at understanding what's going on in Singapore itself by and for Singapore, with a long-term vision of improved preparedness and better informed IoT cybersecurity defenses and best practices. So with that, I would like to now turn the floor over to Piotr to tell us about his experience in data-boosted international collaboration. Piotr?
Hello.
And we need the next slide deck.
Yeah, it would be great.
Which I believe is slide deck number 2.
Yeah, I can see slides, so I hope you also. Yep. Okay, so once again, my name is Piotr Lewandowski. I work as a senior software engineer at the Information Security Methods Department in NASK. NASK is a Polish National Research Institute. I think I would like to ask you to switch the slide because I don't think I have a control. Yeah, thank you. It was established in 1991. From 92, we are operator of PL domain. From 96, we have the first set in Poland. In 2005, we have established a contact point for responding to illegal and harmful content on the internet. From 2017, we have a status of National Research Institute, and from 2018, we are one of the national level CSAs. So, yeah, next slide, please.
Yeah, you had, it was on the right slide deck. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to tell you more about our latest project, VAR IoT. It started in 2019 and it's now ending. It was funded from CEF Telecom and European Union Programming and Polish Ministry of Education. Next slide. The objective of the project was to provide actionable information regarding cybersecurity of IoT devices environment. Next slide, please. Yeah, we had a consortium of 5 partners from across the Europe. It was our research institute, 2 universities, and 2 cybersecurity institutions. Next slide, please. Okay. Outcomes of the project are available for free for everyone through European Data Portal. Next slide. Also, other data is available through Shadow Server data feeds and their dashboards. Also, MISP software has been added a feature to handle IoT-related data. Next. Okay. So, NASK was mostly involved in building IoT vulnerabilities and exploits databases, which is available on varioddbs.pl website. We are integrating 50 sources of information about vulnerabilities and exploits, as they are mostly general purpose databases. We need to use custom filters and natural language processing tools to select IoT-related information only. Okay. Information about vulnerabilities and exploits are available on the webpage as a webpage, so everyone can browse it and search for vulnerabilities or exploit targeting device they have. Also, information are available through API, also for free, in a JSON format, so they can be incorporated in some professional cybersecurity software or used for some other researches. And we hope that this availability of information about IoT devices security will help to ensure better security for professional users as well as for home users of IoT devices. Thank you very much. If you would like more details, please visit our web pages or Twitter.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so next up, Evelyn, would you like to tell us about the work at TU Delft on the other slide deck?
Hi, great to be here. I'm just waiting for my slides. I do realize I'm now the last presentation in the last session on the 3rd day, so that's a challenge, but I like challenges, so I would just get ahead. Yeah, so my part for the data-driven international collaboration from a university perspective, I will quickly go through some slides about the university. Next slide, please. How we aim to make impact for a better society, and then go through the slides of our groups working on cybersecurity, and then end with a few international collaborations that we do. Next slide, please. We have 5 themes. in which we work multidisciplinary and challenge-based as a university. And as you can see through all these slides, through all these themes, cybersecurity cross-cuts them all. Next slide, please. We have in total 8 faculties, 16 bachelor programs and 33 master programs. And just like NCU, we are a university of technology. So we are not a comprehensive university. Next slide, please. We have almost 30,000 students and over 6,000 people working at the university. I will give my email address later, so all these numbers, slides and everything, I can give them to you if you're interested. Next slide, please. Also the ranking part, so we are the largest and first ranked university of technology in the Netherlands, and also internationally we have quite a strong position. Next slide, please. And we have broad and international collaboration. This is of the university as a whole, so also on other topics. Later on I will discuss primarily the cybersecurity project. Next slide, please. We have several groups working on cybersecurity. We have one that is led by George Margatis that aims at working on several projects within AI and data-driven methods to mitigate vulnerabilities and also privacy-enhancing technologies and software, hardware, and network security, and also blockchain. Next slide, please. But there's more. So we also do the governance of cybersecurity from a technology perspective with large-scale measurements, for example, of threat intel and abuse data and markets of cybercrime. This group is led by Michel van Eten, who's also involved in the project I will discuss later. Next slide, please. And lastly, we also have people working on cyber resilience with a group working on smart grid security called PowerWeb Institute. It's a very interesting group to further explore. And also cyber physical systems, for example, by Riccardo Ferrari. If you would like to know more about them, I will happily introduce you to these researchers. Next slide, please. So if we look at collaborations that we do, we actually have also collaborations with Singaporean entities, Interpol, and also with CFlow Cybersecurity. I would like to tell a little bit more about the projects mentioned on this slide. So we do research on data-driven policies because understanding size and nature of challenges can make police decisions more specific and effective. For example, to combat cybercrime and crimes facilitated by dark web, the decision which one to target is estimated by correlated transaction volumes. This is a project that we are working on. And also to make law enforcement more effective and collaborative in the fight against cybercrime, deconfliction is key to avoid blue-on-blue operations and to stimulate collaboration. So there the question is how to deal with this sensitive case information in public-private settings internationally. The last project on this slide is that network cybercrimes are not committed in isolation anymore, but in networks of facilitators. So we do research on the dynamics, on how activities propagate and how to visualize these dependencies. And research on these network dynamics is in our scope too. And there will be more on this interesting collaboration soon, also with the MOU signing with CFlow Cybersecurity. Next slide, please. Also with Japan, we have a very long-term already strategic collaboration. With Japan, we work, for example, on the discovery of attacks and remediation of insecure ICS remote management devices. And also we work on measuring ISP and consumer efforts to remove Mirai. If you would like to know more about this work, you can contact me, Carlos Ganan and Michel van Eten. Next slide, please. And also, lastly, we are very excited to join GCA. Because we really, using and working with them on their data.
Oh, it's dropped.
lost signal.
Sure.
Here we go. You're back.
Yeah, I don't know, what was my last part?
You were excited about working with the Global Cyber Alliance,
Yeah,
which I think
that's
is a
very
great
good
thing.
point actually to finish. So it's no, the only thing I wanted to add to that is we can also do that with the Netherlands Cybersecurity Center. That would be really nice, and that we really believe that working together with GCA is a very big step in for us at least, and I hope for the internet as well to make it more secure. So thank you for your attention.
Great. Thank you very much. So now we would like to move to some questions and discussion. And I know that the Slido is active for those who are using it and can submit questions. Please do. But I think first and foremost, what I'd like to do is to dig a little bit more into this notion of data and international collaboration. And I would ask each of you if you could share some thoughts on what is perhaps the most challenging aspect that you've encountered in terms of doing international collaboration around data. And of course, I'm sitting here and I can pick which one I ask first. So maybe, Piotr, do you want to start?
Well, I think for at least our last project was IoT project. It was a time and requirements from European Union to have all this paperwork done in a matter of time because we had a really small amount of time, and some of the requirements were pretty strict. For example, they needed us to get some signatures from ministries, from country ministries where an institution would like to collaborate underlie. So some institution in some countries said that it's not possible to get this kind of signature in so small amount of time. So yeah, I think it was kind of a challenge for this project.
Paperwork. It always comes down to the paperwork. Thank you. Evelina, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think for universities, it's really the data itself already. So getting access to data and then also being allowed to do research and publish about it, that's pretty incremental. And then I think also agreeing on the aims. So for example, okay, you know, the aim is to make the internet more secure, but for companies, there's of course a different measurement of success than for a university. So really agree on what way you want to collaborate and what's in it for all parties involved. I think that is something you can not overlook.
And I would like to be sure that both Sunchia and Phil feel free to jump in if you have any thoughts to share on this or any other question.
I might add one thing here, which I think ties into what both the speakers were saying. In my experience, and it has been, you know, as you can tell from the gray hair, I've been doing this for a long, long time. The biggest challenge around collaboration is almost always complexity, in my view. And this ties into what particular Peter was saying. Everybody always brings their own viewpoint, right? And there are a set of national laws. You know, if you deal with a university, every university wants to use their own, you know, NDAs and other forms. Every company wants to use their own NDAs and other forms. And so, you know, even if you get past the point that there's a business interest or a common public interest for people working together, you know, we as an industry, as a group of people working together, have made it as hard as possible to do this in a lot of cases. There are the human elements, there are the technical elements, there are the policy elements. I used to like to say, because I spent some time at the Department of Homeland Security, that, you know, if I had somebody from industry show up and say, I'd like to share some data that will help you complete your mission, my first thought was always, well, I better call the lawyers in to see if I can actually take the information, right? And if you're dealing with information security problems, with cybersecurity problems, by first asking lawyers what they think, you're not doing it right.
So maybe we can think a little bit more too about the fact that systemic cyber risk is in fact a shared problem globally, but some regions may have different priorities or not. So I don't know if there are any particular reflections on that particular question that people would like to share. And I can observe that, you know, there have been recent instabilities in regional politics, and has that in fact made it harder, or has that in fact brought regions together in order to address cybersecurity challenges globally? Evelina, would you like to start?
Well, I'm not sure yet, to be honest.
Okay.
Of course, it has brought focal aims of collaborations. Yeah, there are different aims now for some collaborations because of the geopolitical changes. But for me, from a university perspective, before that, for example, translates in opportunities to do funded research. That is now, I think it's starting to come, but yeah, from my perspective right now, not so much has changed. Only that you can see that there's attention, of course, for different the things that are happening right now with Russia.
Right. And Piotr, I don't know if you have seen either a change in attention level or certainly a change in the data levels.
Well, as an institution placed in Poland, which is at the border of the conflict, we can observe much more activities around cybersecurity or attacks or something like this. So I think from our perspective, the Polish one, yeah, we can see this a little bit more interest in cybersecurity. So, for example, during pandemic, we had an initiative to run some kind of fact-checking department in our institution, and now it's also focused on subjects related to the war. So not only war or but also, for example, immigrants or laws connected to this all situation. So, yeah, from our perspective, it did change, maybe not dramatically, but substantially.
So maybe bringing it around full circle before we go to the questions in Slido, we can talk about what is the secret to effective international collaboration, because clearly that's a necessary piece to bring some conclusion here. Sunchia, you look like you would like to.
No, I just want to add a point. Apart from really the challenges that you're talking about in terms of international collaboration or R&D collaboration, really I think there are also opportunities that are out there, and I like to focus on two. The reach and the richness. I mean, as a result of a pandemic, somewhat it has catalyzed the acceleration of digitalization. I mean, we won't be able to have the two panelists here participating together with us in the hybrid mode. In fact, our experience with some of our initiatives like the cybersecurity labeling scheme, I mean, we couldn't have actually reached out to so many parties within a very short duration if not for the digitalization and the availability of online platform. So I think there's really a great opportunity in terms of reach for actually wider and more global collaboration. And the other part is really richness, very much into the human element as well the impact. In my past experience driving R&D in the Ministry of Defense, I find the human element is really important, whereby you really need to converge interest and be very clear what is really the problem. I mean, curate the problem and understand what is the impact that is delivering, which with the richness in be able to curate the problem, define the problem sharper, and understand and the outcome and the impact it's delivering. I think that's a really great motivation factor. And if you are able to define the richness of that problem, hopefully you will be able to overcome what Phil mentioned early on about all those legalistic and administrative issues. So, I mean, there are opportunities there as well, I mean, in this new digital world.
Great, thank you. Phil?
Well, on just the last question you mentioned, what are the most important factors on collaboration? I think I'm going to repeat to some extent what Mr. Lim and before what our colleague from TU Delft said. I think the two most important things are first what Mr. Lim just said was agreement of objectives and making sure you have objectives that make a difference. If you don't have the same objective, it's not going to work. And second, all of the people participating in the collaboration need an incentive. They must see that it is in their interest, whether that's an economic interest or a mission-based interest in a mission-based organization, to move forward together. I think back to, again, back in the 1990s when the US passed a law that allowed protection of vulnerability information that was shared with the government. And a person from a large company told me, well, it's nice that we've got this protection, we'll use it if it's available, but we're still not going to share information because it's not in our business interest to do so. So changes have been made. It's I think people now recognize that we do need to collaborate, but you actually need to think through common objectives and incentives in almost any collaborative structure to have success.
Thank you. I don't know, Evelina, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think Phil has covered it very well. Thanks.
All right. So we have a number of questions from the Slido channel, and I'm going to take them out of order. First question that we'll address is, how can we promote international standards like the Common Security Advisory Framework or RFC 9116 to IoT vendors? So we can take that from the standpoint of it's international collaboration if it's a standard, and how do we actually address the problem of making it a reality with IoT vendors? Would anybody like to consider that question? I think I can start as a stepping out of my moderator role for a moment. I think one of the key things that actually comes back to exactly what we were just discussing, which is the important part is to make sure that there's an understood problem. Not to go to the understood solution first, but understand the problem first, so that when standards are developed, the motivation for them is better understood, and then I think that provides a positive draw, even if it is a challenge to make it feel more comfortable from a commercial standpoint. If you understand what the problem is, you have the draw. Does anybody else? Yes, please.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on that. I mean, many a times when we develop standards, sometimes it's just develop standards without the end goal to make sure it's adopted. And in fact, if it's a standard that's not adopted, it's just a guideline. And maybe we should differentiate between guidelines and standards. And I think we need to have that motivation and the impetus to make sure that standards are actually adopted. And I think that should be, well, I would suggest that in international organizations, standard organizations, or standards community, that actually that be part of that objective and outcome that they should bear in mind.
I think there are sort of three tiers here, and we've talked about the first two. So the first tier is actual just awareness, right? And you were talking about that, Leslie. How do we make sure that everybody understands what is out there? Because to to this day, having done this, as I said, for 30 years, I find out about new initiatives that I never knew about before and standards that I didn't know about before because there's just so much out there. The second piece is one of the things that Mr. Lem was just talking about is you really need incentives, right? So beyond just awareness, how do you have incentives to adopt or implement standards? And then the third tier, which you may need to get to and you may not, is requirements. That's how sometimes incentives affect markets enough, and sometimes you need requirements because there is a public interest in cybersecurity, and we've certainly, every nation in the world, I think, has made the decision, although they may say they haven't, that they are going to impose some cybersecurity requirements. Even as anti-regulatory nation as the United States, for example, regulates cybersecurity in banks and at chemical facilities. So you've got to go through those steps and say, how far do you need to get in order to get where you want to be in terms of outcomes?
Great. Well, I think that we're just about out of time, but I would like to give our two remote panelists one more chance to dive in here. And I would ask each of you in turn, what is the top thing on your wish list for your data-boosted international collaboration to address cybersecurity challenges? So, Evelena, would you like to start? Top thing on your wish list?
To become member of GCA.
But you've already had that wish. There you go.
We can make that happen.
Well, it ain't over until we really sign it. So no, that's really, I think that is right now something that would be really, really nice. And have more of those initiatives. Like the initiative also that Phil spoke earlier about the cyber civil defense is also, I think, a project that brings together so many different aspects of cybersecurity, that those kinds of initiatives are incremental to bring cybersecurity data-driven collaboration further. So I will leave it at that.
Thank you. Piotr?
I think as like Mr. Rattinger said before, it would be great time to live where you don't have to go to your legal team to share some data or other information with community, and I think it would be great to have some kind of a platform where if something is open to everyone, it's really open and don't need to go with so many legal forces or you have to use this data really for good of people.
Great. Thank you both very, very much for that. And thank you both very much for your contributions. And lastly, thank you all for having participated in this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.